It was supposed to be just another night on patrol. The rain was falling in steady sheets, turning the small town of Brooksville into a blur of red and blue reflections. Officer Ethan Cole, 30 years old, known for his discipline and clean record, sat quietly behind the wheel of his cruiser, sipping lukewarm coffee, listening to dispatch chatter through the static. Brooksville was the kind of place where nothing really happened until something did. Unit 47, possible homicide on Willow Street. Suspect female, mid-50s, still on scene. Ethan's heart kicked against his chest. Copy that. Unit 47 en route. When he arrived, yellow tape already wrapped around the small, weathered house at the end of the street. Lights flickered, neighbors whispered, and somewhere in the crowd a child cried softly. Ethan ducked under the tape, flashlight cutting through the rain. Inside, the smell of metal and grief hung thick in the air. On the kitchen floor lay a man in his late 40s, motionless, a dark stain spreading beneath him. Beside him, a woman sat silently, her trembling hands covered in blood. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She just stared at the floor, whispering something Ethan couldn't hear. "Ma'am," he said firmly, his training taking over, "I need you to stand up and put your hands where I can see them." The woman looked up slowly. Her face was pale, her hair streaked with silver and rain, but her eyes, they carried something achingly familiar. For a moment, Ethan froze. He didn't know why, but something inside him stirred. A memory buried under years of silence. "Do you understand?" he repeated, voice unsteady. She nodded weakly and whispered, "I didn't mean to. I was trying to protect him." "Ma'am, please, just cooperate," Ethan said, voice shaking slightly as he reached for the cuffs. As he slipped the cold metal around her wrists, lightning flashed through the kitchen window, illuminating her face completely. And that's when his world stopped. Her eyes, her voice, a faint scar above her eyebrow. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. No, it couldn't be. But deep down, something in him already knew. He whispered, almost inaudible, "Mom?" The woman looked up at him, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks, and for the first time in 20 years, she spoke his name. "Ethan." He froze, handcuffs still on her wrists, radio still buzzing in the background, his badge reflecting the blue light against her tear-streaked face. The officer had just arrested his own mother, and he didn't even know why. The rain hadn't stopped. It drummed against the windows of the Brooksville Police Department like an old clock, ticking down to something inevitable. Officer Ethan Cole sat in silence, his uniform soaked, his hands trembling slightly. Across the narrow hallway, through the fogged glass of the interrogation room, sat the woman he had just arrested, his mother. He hadn't seen her in 20 years, not since the night she disappeared, when he was just 10. Standing at the window, watching her taillights vanish down the street after a fight with his father. For years, he told himself she was gone for good, dead, maybe. It was easier than believing she had left him by choice. And now, she was sitting in an orange jumpsuit, accused of murder. The irony tasted like ash. Detective Harris, his grizzled partner, walked in carrying a file. "She's not talking much," he muttered, tossing the file on the table. "Says the guy attacked her first. Some kind of break-in gone wrong, but witnesses say they were arguing before it happened." Ethan's throat tightened. "Who was the victim?" "Name's Frank Donovan, 52, retired contractor. Lived alone, no family on record." Harris paused, studying Ethan's face. "You know her, don't you?" Ethan swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "She's a familiar face, yeah." But inside, his mind was spiraling. Frank Donovan. The name felt heavy, familiar in a way he couldn't explain. Through the glass, he watched her. She sat perfectly still, hands clasped, eyes red, not defiant, not broken, just tired. After a long breath, Ethan pushed open the door. The sound of it creaking echoed like thunder. She looked up, her lips trembled. "You shouldn't be here." He stood across from her, trying to find the right words, any words, but his voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me? 20 years, and I find out like this." Tears welled in her eyes. "Ethan, please, not like this. You left me," he snapped, louder than he meant to. "You walked out on me and Dad, and now I find you in a murder scene." Her shoulders shook, but her voice was quiet, like a wound that never healed. "You don't know what happened that night, or who your father really was." Ethan frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" She looked away. "Your father wasn't the man you think he was. He wasn't the hero you made him out to be." "What the hell does that mean?" She met his eyes then, and for the first time, he saw something in them that terrified him. "Truth. I didn't leave you, Ethan," she whispered. "I was running from him." The room went silent. Even the rain seemed to pause outside. Ethan's breath caught. His father, Michael Cole, had been a respected cop, his role model, the reason Ethan wore the badge, the man everyone in Brooksville admired. "You're lying," Ethan said, voice shaking. "He was a good man." Her tears fell freely now. "He was a violent man, Ethan, to me, to others. I stayed as long as I could, until I saw what he was becoming, until I realized he was teaching you the same thing." Ethan took a step back, the world tilting beneath him. No, that's not true. "I loved you too much to let you grow up like him," she whispered. "I left to protect you. And now," her voice broke, "now I'm paying for another man's sins." Harris burst into the room. "Ethan, step out. Now." But Ethan couldn't move. His mother was shaking, whispering something he could barely hear. "The man I killed tonight, he wasn't a stranger. He was your father's partner." Ethan's eyes widened. Frank Donovan, his father's old partner from the force, the man who mysteriously vanished the same year his mother did. Pieces began to fall into place, and they cut deep. Harris pulled Ethan by the arm, but he resisted, staring through the glass one last time. His mother's voice, trembling but clear, followed him as he left the room. "Ethan, I didn't kill for hate. I killed for truth." Outside, the rain started again, harder this time, as if the sky itself was breaking under the weight of the past. Ethan leaned against the hallway wall, heart pounding, every belief he ever had about justice, family, and right or wrong starting to crumble. He had spent his life protecting the law. Now he had to decide whether to protect the woman who broke it, or the truth that might destroy them both. The next morning, the sky over Brooksville was a dull gray, heavy and unmoving, like the town itself knew something was about to change. Ethan sat alone in his squad car, staring at the old photograph he had pulled from his glove compartment, his father in uniform, standing proudly beside a younger version of himself, and another man, Frank Donovan. The caption on the back was faded, but still visible. "Brothers in Blue, 1998. Now one of them was dead, and the other might not have been the man Ethan believed in." He clenched his jaw and turned the key in the ignition. He needed answers, not as a cop, but as a son who had lived in the shadow of lies for too long. The Brooksville archives were buried in the basement of the precinct, where the air smelled of dust and forgotten things. Ethan moved past rows of old boxes, some marked internal affairs, others sealed with tape that hadn't been touched in decades. He found the one he was looking for. Cole Donovan, 2005. Inquiry. A chill ran through him. That was the year his mother vanished. He sliced open the tape. Inside were yellowed reports, crime scene photos, and transcripts. As he flipped through them, his breath quickened. Officer Michael Cole and Officer Frank Donovan under investigation for missing narcotics and unreported cash seizures. Case closed due to lack of evidence. Ethan's eyes widened. Narcotics? Missing money? His father, the man who taught him that honor and justice were sacred, was under investigation for corruption. His pulse pounded in his ears. He turned the next page, a handwritten note attached to a statement. It was signed by Clara Cole, his mother. "They said if I talk, they'll come after me. Frank knows everything. He was there that night. Please, someone protect my son." Ethan's hands began to shake. His mother had gone to internal affairs before she disappeared. She had tried to tell the truth. He stumbled back, gripping the table for balance. The world felt like it was collapsing inward. The hero he worshipped, the badge he wore, the law he trusted, all tainted by the ghost of his father's sins. "Everything okay, Cole?" Detective Harris's voice echoed from the doorway. Ethan turned, quickly shoving the papers back into the box. "Yeah," he lied, "just looking over old reports." Harris stepped closer, eyes sharp. "You know, you're not supposed to be digging through archived IA files without clearance." "I needed context," Ethan replied, trying to stay calm. Harris smirked faintly. "Be careful, son. Some ghosts should stay buried." Ethan's stomach twisted. The way Harris said it, calm, deliberate, felt like a warning, or maybe a threat. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt like an echo from the past. He poured a glass of whiskey, sat on the couch, and stared at the photo again. His father, Frank Donovan, and that proud smile that now looked hollow. He whispered, "What were you hiding, Dad?" His phone buzzed, a restricted number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A woman's trembling voice came through the static. "Ethan, you need to stop looking into this." He froze. "Who is this?" Silence. Then, "They killed Frank because he was going to talk. Don't make the same mistake." The line went dead. Ethan's heart pounded as he stared into the darkness. Somewhere, someone still cared enough to warn him, or scare him away. Either way, it only meant one thing. His mother was telling the truth. The next morning, Ethan walked into the precinct with a new look in his eyes, the kind that said he wasn't a son looking for closure anymore. He was a cop on a mission. He turned to Harris, his voice low. "I want access to every file tied to Frank Donovan's last case." Harris narrowed his gaze. "You sure you want to open that door, kid?" Ethan met his eyes coldly. "That door already opened 20 years ago. I'm just walking through it now." The small town of Brooksville had always looked peaceful from the outside. Quiet streets, polite neighbors, the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. But Ethan now knew better. Peace was a mask, and beneath it was silence, the kind that hides the screams people are too afraid to make. That morning, he drove straight to the old precinct storage facility, a metal building on the edge of town where unsolved cases and retired files gathered dust. He'd signed himself in under the pretense of reviewing an old narcotics file, but what he was really doing was digging into ghosts no one wanted found. He found the files from 2005, the same year his father's unit was disbanded. Half of them were missing. The rest were redacted. Black lines covering names, addresses, and entire paragraphs of reports. Ethan frowned. "Someone cleaned this," he whispered. Then, in the corner of one box, he found a photo, water-damaged but clear enough. It showed his father, Frank Donovan, and Detective Harris standing beside a table piled high with confiscated drugs and cash. His stomach twisted. Harris, the same man now telling him to leave it alone, was part of that same unit, and suddenly all the strange things Harris had said made sense. Later that night, Ethan sat in his truck outside Harris's house. A porch light flickered. Through the rain-smeared windshield, he could see Harris inside, laughing with his wife, pretending to be just another man living a quiet life. But Ethan's mind replayed his mother's words. "They said if I talk, they'll come after me. Frank knows everything." He couldn't shake it. He took out his phone and dialed internal affairs, but hung up before the first ring. If this went deep, IA wouldn't help him. Not in Brooksville. Not when the infection had been festering for 20 years. He realized what he had to do. He had to go back to the one person who had been silenced for 2 decades, his mother. In the dim light of the county jail, Clara Cole sat at the metal table, hands folded, eyes tired but sharp. When Ethan walked in, she didn't speak. She just looked at him like she already knew what he'd found. Ethan sat across from her, sliding the photo across the table, the one with his father, Frank, and Harris. Her breath hitched. She looked away. "You knew?" Ethan said quietly. "You knew they were all involved." She nodded slowly. "It started small. Evidence skimming. Side deals with informants, cash that never made it to the evidence locker. Your father said it was just to make up for underpaid cops. But greed doesn't stop once it starts." Ethan's voice trembled. "And you tried to expose them." Clara's eyes glistened. "I did, but Frank found out. He came to the house that night to warn me, or maybe silence me. I don't know which. He said Harris was going to kill your father to cover their tracks." Ethan leaned forward, stunned. "Wait, Harris killed Dad?" Tears ran down her cheeks. "I don't know, Ethan, but your father died 2 days later in what they called a car accident, and Frank disappeared. I ran before they could make me the next loose end." Ethan's hands shook as he pressed his palms to the table. "So all these years, you were hiding from them?" She nodded. "Not hiding. Surviving." He looked at her differently now, not as a criminal, but as a woman who had been running from monsters wearing badges. Clara whispered, "You have to be careful. Harris isn't done covering his tracks. The only reason I'm still alive is because they thought I was gone forever." Ethan exhaled sharply, anger and fear warring inside him. "If what you're saying is true, I can't just walk away." Her voice cracked, desperate. "Then you'll end up like your father, or worse." That night, Ethan drove home through the rain, headlights blurring against the fog. His mind replayed every memory of Harris. Every compliment, every drink shared after a shift, every fatherly piece of advice. It all felt poisoned now. When he reached home, he noticed something strange. His front door slightly open. He drew his gun, heart pounding, and stepped inside. The house was dark, silent. Then he saw it, a box of IA files he had hidden under his bed, scattered across the floor. Every photo, every note, gone. But one thing was left behind, a small piece of paper taped to his bathroom mirror. In neat handwriting, it read, "You should have listened, H." The next morning, the precinct was quiet, too quiet. Harris wasn't at his desk. Neither was Ethan's badge. When he checked his locker, he found it empty. Every file, every personal item gone. He was being erased. He turned slowly toward the hallway mirror, his reflection cold, hollow-eyed and tired. The boy who once believed in his father's badge was now staring at a man hunted by its ghosts. Rain came down hard over Brooksville that night, a steady, punishing rhythm, washing over the streets like the town itself was trying to scrub away its sins. Ethan drove aimlessly, the wipers struggling against the storm. His badge lay on the passenger seat, glinting under the dashlight, a relic of everything he used to believe in. He had spent his life chasing bad men. Now he was the one being chased. The police scanner crackled beside him. His name was on the alert. Officer Ethan Cole, wanted for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and possible homicide. He let out a bitter laugh. They didn't waste time. He pulled into an abandoned diner on Route 9, one that used to serve truckers before the highway reroute killed the business. Inside, the place still smelled faintly of coffee and oil. Ethan sat in the corner booth, spreading the remaining files across the table. There were fragments, enough to prove something was rotten, but not enough to expose Harris. Too many missing names. Too many ghosts. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A voice came through, low and shaky. "You don't know me, but I knew your father. He wasn't supposed to die." Ethan froze. "Who is this?" "Meet me where the river bends past the mill." Midnight. Click. By the time Ethan reached the mill, the rain had softened to mist. The moon hung low, pale and tired. He parked and stepped out, gun ready. A figure emerged from the fog. A man in his 60s, thin, nervous, chain-smoking like the world was ending. "Name's Calder," the man said. "I worked internal affairs before they shut me out. I saw your father's last report. Harris was laundering drug money through seized evidence." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You can prove it?" Calder nodded slowly. "I could have, but the night I tried to bring it forward, someone torched my car. My family barely got out." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. "This is what's left. Surveillance footage, bank logs, names they didn't manage to bury." But before Ethan could take it, headlights sliced through the fog. Two cars, engines revving, doors slamming. Calder's face went pale. "They found us." Gunfire shattered the quiet. Ethan dove behind the concrete barrier as bullets tore through the mill walls. Calder went down, clutching his side, gasping. Ethan grabbed the flash drive, pressed it to his chest, and fired back. Controlled bursts, covering his retreat. He reached Calder, kneeling beside him. Calder coughed blood, voice fading. "Don't let it die with me. Brooksville's built on it." Ethan's eyes burned. "You're not dying here, old man." But Calder smiled faintly. "Son, it already started dying the day they put that badge on your father." His hand went limp. Ethan looked up. The gunfire had stopped. The attackers were gone. Only the echo of rain and the smell of gunpowder remained. He was alone, with the truth in his pocket and blood on his hands. By morning, news broke that Ethan Cole had killed a retired officer and fled the scene. The story spread fast, crafted, polished, and poisoned by Harris's hand. Now, Ethan wasn't just a suspect, he was the story. He drove to the edge of town where the land opened into endless pine woods. He parked, walked deep into the forest, and sat against a tree, exhausted, shaking, bleeding from a graze on his arm. He looked at the flash drive, then at his father's old badge. "The badge protects the good," his father once said. "Only if good men wear it," Ethan whispered back. He knew he couldn't go to the feds. Not yet. Harris had eyes everywhere. He needed proof, leverage, time, and he knew exactly where to find it. He stood, shoulders heavy, and looked toward the horizon, where Brooksville lay hidden under a gray dawn. Somewhere in that quiet town, a man named Harris was sitting behind his desk, sipping coffee like nothing ever happened. But Ethan Cole was coming back. Not as a cop, not as a son, as a reckoning. Brooksville woke up under a blood-colored dawn, the kind that turns the fog red and makes even the good people close their curtains. Ethan sat in his truck at the outskirts, engine idling, watching the town breathe like nothing had changed. Kids waited for buses. Shop owners unlocked doors. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Not for him this time, but it didn't matter. They'd all hear his name again soon. The flash drive sat in the cup holder, his father's ghost inside it. Beside it, the badge, bent, scratched, useless. He holstered his gun, zipped up his jacket, and whispered to himself, "Let's finish this." He started with the old records office, the one Harris used to visit after hours. The building was nearly empty. The clerk barely looked up when Ethan walked in, hood pulled low. He bypassed the desk and headed straight for the basement archives. The lights flickered weakly as he plugged Calder's drive into the terminal. Footage played. Grainy, black and white surveillance from 2005. Harris and his father, Frank Donovan, unloading boxes of seized narcotics. Only half of it went into the evidence room. The rest stuffed into unmarked crates, loaded into a private van. Then another clip. Harris meeting a man in a suit. Envelopes changing hands. Ethan's jaw clenched. His father's face appeared again. Tired, hollow, conflicted. In one frame, he pushed the camera aside. His lips moved, barely audible. "This has to stop." 2 days later, he was dead. Ethan copied everything onto his phone and pocketed the drive. He knew what he had to do next. confront Harris before the man buried him for good. Harris's house sat at the edge of town, a single-story brick home surrounded by the kind of calm that only guilt can buy. Ethan parked down the road and walked the rest of the way, the sky turning the color of rust as evening fell. The sound of cicadas filled the silence like a heartbeat. Through the window, he saw Harris at the dinner table, wife gone, alone, pouring whiskey into a glass. Ethan stepped up to the door and knocked once. The old detective looked up, wary, then tense. He opened the door halfway, eyes sharp. "Jesus Christ, Ethan, you look like hell." Ethan smiled thinly. "Hell's not far from here, is it?" Harris sighed, stepping back. "You shouldn't have come. You're already a dead man." "I know," Ethan said, stepping inside. "But before I go, you're going to tell me what really happened to my father." The air was thick, 2 guns on the table, neither touched yet. Harris poured himself another drink. "Your father got weak. He wanted out. We warned him, but he kept pushing. One night he called me, said he was going to the press, so I did what I had to do." Ethan's breath hitched. "You killed him." Harris looked away. "I made it look like an accident. That was mercy, kid. You don't know the kind of men behind this. Brooksville isn't just dirty. It's owned." Ethan's voice cracked. "You let him die for money." "Not for money," Harris said coldly. "For survival." He turned his back, staring out the window. "You think you're any different? You wear that badge long enough, you start rotting too." Ethan reached for his phone, opening the folder of evidence. "It's over, Harris. I've got enough to bury you." Harris turned, eyes dead. "No, son. You've got enough to get yourself killed." He reached for his gun, but Ethan was faster. A single shot, glass shattered. Harris staggered, clutching his chest, falling into the shards that once framed his perfect little life. He looked up, blood pooling, whispering, "You think this ends with me?" Ethan's hand trembled on the gun. "No," he said softly, "but it starts to." Later that night, the Brooksville police found the house burning. No trace of Harris, no trace of Ethan. But by morning, the evidence files, the ones Calder left behind, were uploaded to every major news outlet in the state. Photos, bank transfers, reports, everything Harris had buried, now unearthed. And in the corner of one image, captured by a neighbor's camera before the fire, a silhouette walking away through the rain. Weeks passed. Brooksville changed, or at least tried to. New cops, new promises, same scars, and somewhere up north, at a quiet lakeside cabin, a man sat alone, beard grown, eyes distant. He kept his father's badge on the table beside him, not as a symbol, as a warning. He stared at the water and whispered, "Justice doesn't clean the world, it just keeps it from drowning." The camera drifted back, fading into the fog over the lake. Silence. Then fade to black, fade to black. Years later, the lake still looks the same, still as glass, cold as the truth. The world has moved on, at least that's what they say. Brooksville rebuilt its precinct, repainted its streets, replaced the faces on the force, but some stains don't wash out, they just learn how to hide. Ethan Cole lives in a cabin far north, tucked between the pines and the fog. No phone, no badge, just the sound of water and the memories he can't drown. Every morning, he brews coffee the way his father did. 2 scoops, slow stir, black as the nights he still dreams about. He sits by the window, watching the fog roll in, waiting for it to lift. It never really does. On the table beside him, his father's badge, bent, faded, and next to it, a folded newspaper yellowing at the edges. Headline, "Brooksville Corruption Scandal. 17 officers convicted." A smaller line beneath it, "One whistleblower remains unidentified." He stares at the paper for a long time. Not proud, not regretful, just tired. Some nights he dreams of the house fire, the orange glow reflected in the rain, Harris's final words echoing, "You think this ends with me?" He wakes up sweating, walks to the porch, and lets the cold air cut through the ghosts. Sometimes he imagines his mother sitting beside him, older now, free, safe under a different name somewhere down south. She sends him letters, always unsigned, always written in the same soft hand. "You did what you had to do. Don't forget to live." He keeps them in a box under his bed, never rereads them, but never throws them away. One morning, while gathering wood near the shore, he spots something half buried in the dirt, a fragment of old metal, rusted but familiar. He picks it up, a bullet casing, maybe his, maybe not. He looks at it for a while, then tosses it into the lake. It sinks slowly, vanishing into the quiet. The ripples spread, then fade, just like everything else. The final shot drifts from Ethan's porch to the lake, the forest, the mountains, peaceful, deceptive. Then, faintly from somewhere distant, a siren wails. It fades quickly, swallowed by the wind. Ethan watches the horizon, whispering almost to himself, "The world doesn't stay clean, Dad, but maybe, just maybe, it stays watched." He takes one last sip of coffee, sets the cup down and closes his eyes. The camera lingers on his face, calm, aged, scarred by truth, fade out. A single line appears on screen. Some justice burns quietly. 20 years later, a new badge, a new face. Same town, Brooksville. Population smaller, streets quieter. The precinct rebuilt again, but every town has its ghosts. This one just happens to have a lake. Officer Lena Grayson stands by the edge of Lake Warden, the same lake where Ethan Cole once watched the fog roll in and refused to let the past die. She's here on a call. Local kids found something by the water. She crouches down. The morning mist wraps around her boots. What she sees at first looks like nothing, just driftwood, half-buried metal, mud. But when she brushes the dirt away, something catches the light. A badge, bent, faded, number scratched away, except for one letter still visible. C. Lena frowns, turns it over. On the back, barely legible through years of rust and time, a line is engraved. The world stays watched. She straightens, scanning the lake. Quiet, endless, still as ever. But then she notices ripples. Not from her, not from the wind. Something moves beneath the surface, slow, deliberate. For a heartbeat, a shadow breaks the reflection. It looks human. She blinks. It's gone. The water smooths again. Only the trees whisper. Her radio crackles. Grayson, you copy? You find anything? She hesitates, eyes still on the lake. Then softly, yeah, something. She pockets the badge, walks back toward her cruiser. The camera lingers on the lake. Still silent, endless. Then, a faint glimmer underwater, where sunlight touches metal. Something rests there, a rusted gun, half buried in silt. Next to it, the corner of a photo, water damaged but still visible. A young Ethan Cole standing beside his father. The current shifts, covers it again. People think justice is about right and wrong, but it's not. Justice is about what's left behind, about who's still standing when the dust settles, and who gets remembered. I used to think the truth was clean, that if you dig deep enough, you'd find light. But the truth, it bleeds, it rusts. It sinks to the bottom and waits for someone brave or broken enough to pull it up. Brooksville was just a town, a dot on a map, but in that small circle of silence, everything I believed in was tested. A badge can shine, but it can also blind you. A mother's love can save you or destroy you, and sometimes they're the same thing. People ask why I left, why I stopped wearing the uniform. The truth is, I didn't stop being a cop. I just stopped pretending the law always knows the difference between good and right. If you stand by still water long enough, you start to see yourself. Not how you want to be, but how you really are. And maybe that's what justice is. Not peace, not revenge, just reflection. A gray morning over Lake Warden. Mist curls over the surface like breath on glass. The water is still. So still, it almost looks solid. A lone rowboat drifts toward the center, paddled by Officer Lena Grayson. She's older now, softer lines around her eyes, the kind that come from both knowing too much and sleeping too little. The badge on her chest gleams faintly, the same one she found years ago, now restored, polished, carried like a question she can't stop asking. The wind hums low through the pines. The world feels half awake, half watching. Lena, VO. They said the lake went quiet after that fire, but quiet doesn't mean empty. It just means whatever's down there learned how to wait. She pulls the oars in, lets the boat drift. The water mirrors the sky, both pale, colorless, infinite. She takes out a photo, creased, water-stained, of Ethan Cole and his father. The same photo found beside the rusted gun years ago. She runs her thumb across Ethan's face. My father told me once, some men die for the badge and some die because of it. I never understood what he meant until Brooksville. She reaches into her jacket pocket and pulls out a small evidence bag. Inside it, a single bullet casing, cleaned and sealed. She stares at it, then whispers, "You left this behind, didn't you?" She opens the bag, drops the casing into the water. It sinks slow, spiraling like a memory trying to find rest. Ripples stretch out, slow, perfect circles, distorting her reflection. For a second, it's not her face staring back, it's Ethan's. Her breath catches. She blinks. It's gone. Only the water, still again. But something changes in the soundscape. A faint creak of a boot, a whisper of breath close. Behind her, she freezes, slowly turns. No one, just the empty boat, the fog, the echo of her heartbeat. Then, faintly from across the lake, a figure, a man standing on the distant shore, still watching. The fog shifts around him like it knows his shape. Lena squints, but the figure doesn't move. She raises her flashlight, its beam cutting across the mist. For one heartbeat, he's clear, older, bearded, familiar. Ethan Cole, his face calm, unreadable, his eyes steady, not haunting, not hollow, just aware. Lena, softly. Ethan, her voice breaks the silence, and with it, the illusion. The beam flickers, the fog swallows him whole. He's gone. The sound of a single splash echoes across the lake. Then nothing, only still water. She looks down again, at her reflection, but this time she doesn't see herself. She sees both of them, two faces merging. hers and his, fading together in the rippling surface. Lena, VO. They say truth can't stay buried, but maybe it doesn't rise either. Maybe it just becomes part of the water. She places the photo on the lake's surface. It floats for a moment, then sinks. Slow, graceful, vanishing beneath the ripples. The sky darkens. Rain begins to fall. Tiny drops shatter the reflection until it's just chaos and light. Cut to aerial shot. The lake from above. Raindrops striking the surface like Morse code. 1,000 tiny explosions of memory. The mist rises higher, curling toward the tree line. Then, as the sound fades, something glints beneath the surface. The bent badge, lying next to the gun and the photo, half buried but not forgotten. A hand, faint, ghost-like, brushes across it for a split second, then vanishes. Fade to black. The sound of water continues for a few seconds. Then Ethan's voice, faint, distant, like it's coming through time itself. The world stays